Welcome to San Antonio, land of romance and entertainment. The Alamo, Missions, the Riverwalk, the Spurs, the Hemisphere, and its friendly people. But it wasn't always a home for LGBT, fun and friendly. What shaped the social face of gays in San Antonio? Let's take a journey back in time and explore what shaped the attitudes of the city called the Mission of San Antonio de Valero. Texas, the scene of warring fractions of Native Americans over resources and control. Many major Native nations respected same-sex couples. The Comanche, Wichita, Paiute, Apache. The Catholic Church offered protection and refuge if they gave up their religious practice. But even the missions were overrun, destroying everyone inside. Mission San Juan, Mission Concepcion, and many others. By the 1700s, Italy is in the Renaissance. Followed Spain. France decriminalizes homosexuality. And England is enjoying peace and prosperity for 200 years. Mexico inserts its governors into Texas till 1800. By the end of the French and Indian War, the remaining Native American population is moved to reservations. Cavalry introduces Europeans to San Antonio and the Wild West.
Immigrants. In numerical order, the nationalities were Irish, German, Austrian, Italian, British, Dutch, French, Swiss, then other nationalities.
The desire for independence burns strong, and the battle cry is, "Remember the Alamo!" Businessmen, landowners, Stephen Austin, William Travis, Sam Houston argue for independence, and the Texas flies its own flag, prints its own money. It's broke in 10 years. And must be annexed to the U.S. for $10 million, pays off its debt. Begins destiny as gateway to the Wild West. Nevertheless, it was ex-Confederate soldier George T. Howard that determined the ruling industry and economy of San Antonio, distribution of cattle to the military. By 1894, they would establish the Businessmen's Club of San Antonio and seal the relationship with the military forever. But cattle meant cowboys and fast cash meant fast gals, and loose laws and outlaws. And Texas spread it to the west. Gays were a special order. Madame Lotta of El Paso and Fanny Porter of San Antonio became wealthy and respected. San Antonio had the largest population in the nation, and gays enjoyed the legal cover and tolerance. Houston, 200 brothels. Austin 100 brothels, San Antonio 627. Brothels were located on the southeast side of downtown, near Durango and South Flores. Some of the lavish parlours in town housed the elite, as well as the common cowboy. Famous houses had their own money. And girls paid for license to practice. Just buy a coin and stay all night. The red light district was the biggest in the nation, and some houses were right across the street from the military base, open for lunch for the officers. Texas open policy offered refuse and entertainment to both sides of the law. Billy the Kid. Madams like Squirrel Tooth Alice, Butch Cassidy and the Gang, Pecos Bill. Frank and Jesse James. Texas Rangers. Lulu White specialized in burlesque shows for the elite. John Wesley Hardin was included in the guest list.
red coat and get your hat.
The turn of the century would span from cross-dressing to coronation. 7 famous female impersonators attracted national attention over cross-dressing in public, found guilty, and did it again.
Bit of hat, and that hat fits soon as yourself.
Barbette is discovered at an audition in San Antonio and goes on to become the world's first international acclaimed
I
impersonator.
used to walk in the shade with those blues on parade, but I'm not afraid. This rover crossed over. If I never have a cent, I'll be rich as Rockefeller. Dust at my feet on the sunny side of the street.
Continued to work until 1972.
I used to walk in the
Last 20 years for Walt
blues
Disney.
on parade, but I'm not afraid.
Lilia Elderby has the first transgender operation. Unsuccessful.
Have a cent, I'll be rich as Rockefeller. Oh, dust at my feet on the sunny side of the street. I met a cowboy riding the range one day, and as it jogged along, I heard him singing a most peculiar cowboy song. It was
Challenging gender roles becomes more public and common.
Come a get along, get hip, little kids, get along. Better be on your way, get along. Get hip, little doggies, and it trusts them on down the old fairway, singing his cow boogie in the strangest way. Come a come a singing his cowboy song. He's just too much. He's got a knocked out western accent with a Harlem touch. He was raised on local weed, what you call swing half free, singing his cow boogie in the strangest way. Come
Singing his cowboy song. He's just too much. He's got a knocked out western.
The Night Spot and the Broadway Cabaret, where a girl could always make money entertaining.
Masculine women, feminine men, which is the rooster, which is the hen? It's hard to tell them apart today and say, sister is busy learning to shave.
Berlin, the gayest country in the world, lead the way.
Hard to tell them apart today. Hey, hey.
Each country has its own stars.
When I was a tot,
Sebastian Drosty of Germany, his wife Annette Berber.
knickers and trousers, baggy and wide. Nobody knows who's walking inside. Those masculine women and feminine men.
The Hungarian twins Rose and Paul Ricky. Barbette in America.
Masculine women, feminine men, which is the rooster, which is the hen? It's hard to tell them apart today and say.
dass es möglich gewesen wäre, leicht eine Verständigung herbeizuführen. Aber sie wollten das nicht. Sie wollten den Krieg.
1890. The New World challenges convention and gender roles in Texas and abroad. Cross-dressing practiced privately in San Antonio and Paris. Oscar Wilde imprisoned for homosexuality. Pancho Villa plots the Mexican Revolution from San Antonio, consequently driving immigrants into Texas living in poverty, a condition that would last until the 1940s. The Gentlemen's Club offers free acreage to Lackland. Kelly and Randolph AFB and deny entry to Ford Motors, refusing high wages and unionized jobs, then change their name to the Greater Chamber of Commerce. 1920s. Texas discovers oil, and the first world-famous female drag queen is discovered in San Antonio, Bobette. The gay scene is alive as cabaret entertainment and drag shows. 1930s aftermath of the 1929 market crash and the world prepares for war. Police raids on gays increase. Camp San Antonio internment camp for Germans, Italians, Japanese and Latin Americans. But America was creating its own gay starlets. Bessie Smith, Josephine Baker, Gertrude Stein. The gay cabaret scene is alive on downtown Broadway. Mr. Lucian at the Night Spot and Mr. Harvey Lee. 1940s. Camp San Antonio internment is active. Germany is imprisoning homosexuals for being a threat to their country. Their most famous actor, Lade Van Troutman, was not exempt. The US military issues the Blue List, showing what clubs to avoid and why. General Dwight Eisenhower announces prostitution now illegal. They relocate to the outskirts. The 1950s was a backlash to openness and permissiveness. President Eisenhower announces that any government official guilty of homosexuality will be imprisoned. Senator McCarthy hearings equate homosexuality to communism. J. Edgar Hoover and rumoured lover Clyde Townsend supported it. 1951. The first coronation celebration, throwing satire at local politicians while in costume or drag. '60s. San Antonio is being courted by politicos like John Kennedy, George Bush, Lyndon Johnson. San Antonio tests the social waters. While San Antonio has its World Fair, gays have their first Pride Parade.
I mean, he was Puerto Rican. He was very sexually active, so to speak. So was I. We were young. He was 17.
So this was during the time that women were supposed to simply graduate high school and get married, right?
Have a bunch of kids, stay home. When I married John, I had to quit work. I mean, he definitely was a believer in women stayed home, took care of the kids, took care of the home. I will say this about John. I divorced him not because he was a bad provider. No, he worked 3 jobs to make sure we had the best of everything. He never abused me physically or emotionally or mentally or anything of that. His problem was women. He was a Puerto Rican. As his mother told me more than once, don't divorce him because, you know, he's Puerto Rican and Puerto Rican women get married, but men never do.
Got it. Okay.
Okay, so that was the idea was that you stayed home, you took care of the house and the children, men did whatever they wanted.
Okay. Now,
Puda, my first love, Puda.
Okay. Yes. Now, because why did Puda decide to come to San Antonio?
She lived here.
Okay, so she brought you home in a.
She brought me to San Antonio. She came to Florida and got me and my children.
Compared to, well, you weren't, you were not gay identified.
No.
Well, on the East Coast. You met Puda, and then you came to San Antonio, and
With her.
she was butch, which means,
Very.
and apparently she was from here and knew the life.
Brought
What
me here.
was here at that, and what year was that?
That was in about 69.
1969. Okay.
I'll tell you what happened. This was really strange. Edie, in Florida, Edie took me to the gay clubs.
Okay.
You know, after I met Buddha, and after she had the cancer, after she revealed Rose was her lover, after all of that,
Okay.
she said, okay, since you're writing to Buddha, who's, her name means pure flowers, Buddha flowers, pure flowers. She said, I'm going to show you Florida's other life, other than what I had become accustomed to in Florida, dating Floridian men who were no better than New York men, who also felt that they should be able to take you out, buy you a drink, take you home, and fuck you.
Okay.
Right. I mean, that was it, and I wasn't having none of that. So Edie said, okay, now that you know all about me, let me show you the other half of Florida.
Wow.
So she took me to Floridian clubs. The way you went to a gay club in Florida was you went into a straight club, and you went and looked for a door that said maintenance or cleaning supplies or something of that nature, and you went through that door and you walked into a gay club. So that's how it was.
No.
So
Not very many.
and the clubs there were always being raided, but when I came here it was like a whole different world. I was so surprised because people kept telling me, don't go to Florida, it's very closeted, it's not very open. And I was open from day one. I never even considered, being in a closet of any kind. So, when I came here, I was surprised because the first thing Puda did was she took me to a club called Mary Ellen's. And Mary Ellen's was this kind of shack. It was not even the one she had on Fredericksburg. There was a club on Fredericksburg called Mary Ellen's, but it was before that.
It was.
So then she took me to a place called the Beacon Light, which was in a shopping center. And, I mean, I was like, how closeted is this town when all the clubs are wide open? Everybody knows they're there. There are no surprises.
Now, I have to ask, what was the color mix? Everybody's in a strip center in a club, but was it mixed color?
I don't think so, but it was sort of interesting because Mary Ellen was black.
Okay.
Do you know who she was?
I'm not from here. She's born here.
Do you know her? She was this big, heavy-set
still
black
alive?
woman
I'm not sure.
who ran a gay club. Primarily, I guess, white and Mexican or something of that nature.
Okay.
I didn't see very many black people actually in the club itself. That don't mean they weren't there, but I mean, I went downtown. There was the El Jardín for the whole world to see.
And what was the El Jardín?
It was the oldest gay club in Texas.
Jardín means like
Right downtown.
garden. Jardín means garden.
It was right down there. I mean, everybody knew it was there. Anybody went there.
Wow.
You know, so it was kind of like, to me, from my point of view, an open community. However, people kept telling me it was closeted. So what I can assume from that, which assuming is not very good, but what I drew from that was that people, individuals, were very closeted. Not necessarily the community itself. Now that only is my opinion, you know, not necessarily an open community opinion.
Meaning it's not necessarily gay, but you just don't talk about who you are, what you're about.
You know, in my experience, it was an open community. In the community's experience of its own, their personal lives may have been very closeted, very sheltered, but I didn't find it that way.
You have lived here all your life?
I've lived here about, I want to say, a good 40 years.
40 years. So so you have been here since the 60s?
No, I would
70s?
say the late 70s.
Late 70s?
Yes.
Okay. Now, where did you come from?
Well, originally I was born here in San Antonio, but at the age of 3, I went with my grandparents to Santa Ana, California.
Ooh, yeah. When have you been gay all that time, or considered yourself gay all that time?
I think I was, I guess at the age of maybe 11 or 12.
Okay. And were you in California then?
I was in California, yes, ma'am.
Okay. What was it like coming out to yourself, not necessarily the world, but in California?
To myself, it was confusion, depression. You know, it's a phase. Mm-hmm. And so I had my moments, but then I just kind of put it aside and went on with the regular routine as a growing up as a teenager.
Okay. Where were you when you came out?
I was in Santa Ana, California.
Ah. And was it safe?
No. Let me retract that, because I think what you're trying to say is when it actually came out as a gay Hispanic.
Yes.
Okay, that wasn't. It was here in San Antonio, and I was 45 years old when I came out.
Why did you wait so long?
Because of the family, my brothers. I came from a big family, 15 of us, and there were, you know, all the boys, and all the boys' brothers were getting married, and they would say, "Hey, Mario, why aren't you getting married? You're 20 years old. Are you gay?" But at that time, they didn't call us. They didn't say the word gay. They said joto. And so that was a big word, that was a big insult word. And I said, no, you know, I'm not a joto and all that. I like women. And he said, well, why aren't you married? All of us are getting married. So I think it was because of the culture. And at 45, that's when I decided to come out and just be, after 2 marriages and fathering 11 kids, I decided that it was time for me to live my life the way I wanted to.
Beautiful, beautiful. What was the environment like in San Antonio?
It was back in the 80s. It was there was a lot of stigma, which still is a lot of stigma. But back then, I feel like, you know, I worked for the city as a city inspector, and I worked around anywhere from 50 to 75 male guys. So, you know, I had to portray masculine, you know, inspector. I was a city inspector. You know, I couldn't, you know, reveal my sexuality because I was afraid that if they knew, they would, you know, you would get fired And at that time, I had a family and kids to raise. But it was hard because I had to live a double life.
To be who you are, what was there for you? What organizations were there for you? What friends or what spirituality was there for you?
Nothing. Honestly, nothing. I was just tired of being somebody I'm not. You know, I wanted to be me. You know, I wanted people to accept me. And one thing that I want to mention that it's always stuck in me, my grandmother and my grandfather would tell me, you cannot be gay. You can't be a joto, because if you are, God's going to punish you, and you're never going to amount to nothing. Everything you touch is going to turn to salt, and you're going to be ensalado. Means that you're going to be salted. That means everything that you do is going to be bad. So I went into a depression. There was a couple of times that I thought of committing suicide because I said, oh my God, you know, I like men and God's going to punish me. I'm never going to be where I really want to be in life. I want to have kids. You know, I want to buy a house. And because my grandparents instilled that in me, it stayed with me for the longest time. It wasn't until years later when I came out that there were gay doctors, gay lawyers, you know, gay singers. And I said, they're gay and they're doing good, so why shouldn't I be doing good?
Yeah.
And from there, that was a relief for me because I had to get in the culture. But it was taught to me that I would be an outcast. They outcast me for a while, and that I would have I would have bad luck for the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm. And so how did you become involved in the community? You are a member of a gay organization, or?
Presently, I work for an organization that's been in existence for over 20 years. It's San Antonio Fighting Back, and they do substance abuse. I joined that because back at that time I had a partner, and he passed away from the complications of HIV. So I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to go out there in the community and you know, learn more about it. And you know, little did I know that where my grandmother would tell me that I would never amount to nothing, where my grandmother told me it was bad luck, this particular job is you had to be a Hispanic, you had to be an MSN, and you had to be gay. And I said, oh my God, I can get a job being gay. And so I said, okay, I'm on my way. And plus, I get to talk about sex. You know? So, man, did I hit the jackpot or what? You know?
We've already been there in the sense of saying your political message or whatever. God, I lost my thought, but
It's okay.
You said you were a clown.
yes. And then another thing is, I'm a makeup artist, so I can relate to film. I've been a makeup artist for 30 years. I'm retired, but I've done makeup for Jennifer Lopez. I've done makeup for Selena. I've done makeup for Bill Gates. So, and I've been in San Antonio all my life. Born and raised here, and I had a fabulous career here. I never left. I tackled the Hispanic market, which was to my advantage because I spoke 2 languages. But I encourage you to watch Paris is Burning, because Paris is Burning is where I come from. I come from the 70s, and we used to have to do drag out in the country, out in the city limits, because the cops could not arrest you. They edit, so they'll stop it.
Yeah, we'll go over it.
This man has been half of my life. I'm 60 years old. I've been with him 35, you know? But we'll get into that.
That's beautiful.
There used to be a bar here. There used to be a bar here in the 70s called the Ponderosa. Have you guys heard of anything now? Yeah, the Ponderosa was here, and it was out in the city limits. And so I had a kid brother, my beautiful little brother, my baby brother was just a year younger than I was. And he was a very famous female impersonator in San Antonio. And he was murdered in 1986 for $14 he had in his wallet. So I kind of guess that's how come I got into makeup, because he was always asking me, help me out. Although he did do all of the stuff himself. He was very, very gifted. He was very, very tall. And people thought he was black for the longest time because he was doing songs like Linda Jones and Natalie Cole Live and oh yeah, I mean, as a matter of fact, we just saw him, I have him on video in 1980. And he was so pissed off because we were from here, born and raised here. And he had won numerous titles coming up the ladder of drag. And he was 5 times he came in first runner-up to Miss Gay San Antonio. Because somehow he just never got it. And he had enough. And he said, I'm leaving here and I'm going to Houston. And when he got to Houston, they adored him. He was so hot. He was so hot. And they thought he was a black girl. They really thought he was a black drag queen because he was doing, you know, heavy duty stuff. Aretha Franklin live at the Fillmore West, Stephanie Mills. He did a fabulous rendition of Patti LaBelle that was to die for. Lolita Holloway, you know, just old songs. And we all started doing drag because back in the 70s at a place called Ponderosa.
Undercover. Was there any support from anywhere?
No, there wasn't. As a matter of fact, when they did drag, when we used to do drag, you had, no matter how pretty you looked and how convincing as a girl you looked, you had to wear men's underwear underneath all your drag. Because if the cops stopped you, you had to prove that you were a man and say, look, I'm wearing underwear, men's underwear. Isn't that crazy?
That is insane.
It is.
I don't get that.
Well, you know what? We left all the way to the bank because when they give you lemons, you make lemonade. And same with the LGBT. There was no support. There was no LGBT. You know, the gay community here has been very separated.
Right.
Very separated. The gay community with the LGBT and whatever other organizations, we're not a united community like they are in other major cities. And it hurts, especially being born and raised here, especially being a native here, especially being here 60 years. When is it going to change? Ooh, girl. You got to come back. We can let part 2 to this.
This is good.
Sit over here, baby. No? To my right. The middle 65-year-old people on a motorcycle. Speaking of 65-year-old. So this is Mike.
I know.
And Michael is from Pennsylvania. And Michael and I have been together 34 years. It's been a wonderful, great, super-duper career. Right? Partners forever.
Well, we don't know what forever is, but
Yeah, that's true.
we've never given up on each other, so
Right.
it just continues.
Right.
And what I said earlier regarding the segregation, I only know that being an outsider, because growing up in Philadelphia, in New York City area, there wasn't segregation. You blacks, Puerto Ricans, whatever nationality you were, you lived beside them.
What year was this?
Well, I moved here in 80. So the first 31 years of my life, I spent back east.
Okay.
And so then when I moved here and then met John, he was telling me all about it. It's like, no, we never got together. The Mexican population, the Mexican gay stayed on the south side or the west side, the whites on the other side.
Okay.
And rarely did they ever get together.
Right.
Rarely.
Okay.
And I think
And this
that's
is
why the
Philadelphia.
community is still split.
And are you a gay identified man?
Yeah, I am now. I wasn't when I joined the service. I was, of course, rural Missouri. There was no other gay people around, so I basically was just knew I was different, and assumed that maybe everybody had feelings like I had. You should sit and talk about them. So of course it wasn't until I actually got to San Antonio and I got to the military and actually got to meet the people of San Antonio that I discovered that, no, there's a whole wide world of people out there.
Was it something that was obvious where the gay community was, or you had to go find it and discover your feelings?
Actually the Air Force was very kind and generous. They had a list of These are the places you cannot go because of the bad behavior there. And not just me, but even, you know, all the guys pretty much were like, ooh, what's there that we're not supposed to see? Let's go check it out. Now, did some of the locals who were not officers, maybe some of the sergeants, did they have some problems? Yeah. They also had a problem with women, you know, or blacks or Hispanics or whatever their little prejudice might be. But being gay was just one more of the little things to be aware of.
Understood. Were there any incidences?
Well, this probably won't go into your film, but I was drinking at the NCO club, and a cute airman was like going, you know, I have beer over at the dorm. You know, we don't have to be paying all this money for drinks there. And so we went over there, was having beers with a guy, and he goes, you know, I have a little fridge in my room. We can just go up there and have some beer. And yeah, anyway, it was, did not go as I had planned. It was more of it wasn't a physical assault, but it was not, really, I didn't want, I figured we might do a little something. We did more, and it really wasn't my thing. And I realized afterwards that there was really nothing I could do about it, because in the military at that time, I would have been guilty just because of who I was. And it would be my word versus his word. And that the easiest, best thing to do was just be, it never happened. I realized that I was different, and that there was limitations to what I could do and what I could be. And so by that time, I'd actually kind of like started drinking more, probably that time, to deal with the issues I was having. So I was able to work through relationships more than actually looking out for trying to find a regular full-time job. If that makes sense.
Oh, okay. Okay. Is there anything more you want to say about that?
Well, I was just going to say, the bad news was alcohol led to more heavy drug use, and that was not good. Can't blame that, of course, all on the military, but, you know, that was me not feeling good about myself. I had a lover who died of AIDS. That definitely didn't help. You know, I was I got introduced to Nichiren Buddhism, and that changed my life, and that changed my world.
Were you diagnosed with AIDS?
No. And actually, that was one of those things, when I joined, I never wanted to know. I never wanted to know, because I just assumed that if I did, I did. I wasn't really planning on being with anybody else. But one of the things that they teach is to face your fears. You know, not to let fear run your life. So yeah, actually I did get tested, and, you know, I'm not positive. So that was a benefit. That was good.
Wonderful. At one point in your Buddhist practice, did you find this out?
My first year of practice.
Wonderful.
It was one of the first benefit was actually getting off the drugs. And then the second benefit was starting to get structure to my life. Because after that, then I did get a job that I'm still at today. You know, I started working on getting my own place, you know, taking care of my health. You know, but it's like, I had to learn to love myself, which I was able to do through that you're not going to necessarily get from society.
Okay.
Hi. Thank you so much for being here today, and starting from right to left, who am I speaking with?
I'm Toby Johnson. I was born in San Antonio, left after high school, and ended up living in San Francisco through the 1970s. I moved back to San Antonio in 1981, and had been involved with gay political activity and gay counseling, specifically in San Francisco, and early on befriended Michael Stevens and Patrick Kerr, who were running the calendar and the San Antonio Gay Alliance. And I ended up being the secretary, and then a little later the co-director of the San Antonio Gay Alliance in the mid-'80s.
And
I was born in Del Rio, but raised in San Antonio, and Toby and I met in 1983 at bank where I worked downtown, and we didn't start dating until '84. We now had celebrated our 31st anniversary. We left San Antonio in '88 to come to Austin, and we were running Liberty Books, the gay and lesbian bookstore. I think I'm saying the same thing you just said.
No.
Okay.
No, because you've moved on.
Yes. But so '88 was the end of our stay in San Antonio. We both still have family in San Antonio, and so are forever tied to San Antonio.
Understood. Okay.
So
Now,
we were involved with the gay community, both me a little bit before and then together as a couple, through the middle of the '80s, which was that's the time when AIDS appeared. And there's a way in which AIDS forced visibility of gay issues. What I remember is the crisis of those days was how to achieve visibility and at the same time not offend people or scare people.
that is a question I've been trying to approach. I'm trying to get a feel of who was there. What was the racial makeup? Was that an issue for gays? Was it something that defined the gay movement, or were they already assimilated into the society, and being gay was just something else, like changing your color of your shirt that day? Or was it something that they actually had to live with the police, with the military, with anything else? And did that force the organizations to be created in San Antonio, or was it the AIDS movement that did all that?
Well, certainly the AIDS movement made lots of changes in San Antonio, but coincidentally there were other changes that were happening that weren't necessarily related to the health crisis, like the military ceased to crack down on military men in gay bars, and raids stopped. So it was, things were changing, and there were organizations like SAGA, San Antonio Gay Alliance, that were starting to form. So there was some early groundwork that, fortunately and unfortunately, was preempted by the health crisis of the early '80s. And some things just, a lot of attention was diverted towards AIDS, and community building and hotlines and things like that just started to fall away because our attention was somewhere else.
Okay. As well, Toby?
Well, I come a little later now, and not so much speaking of my own experience, but of how I understood the dynamics in San Antonio in the '80s. What we said was that San Antonio was slow and behind. There was always a joke that San Antonio was 10 years or 20 years behind the rest of the country, which is good and bad. But that the major issues in San Antonio were the presence of the military, which put a chilling effect on being openly gay, the large Hispanic population, which has a sort of different cultural attitude towards what homosexuality is, and top or bottom, and who's gay and who isn't, and then the Catholic Church, which has who created the secrecy and guilt around sex. Okay. So these three forces were seen to sort of dampen or keep invisible gay life in San Antonio. So there was like this secret life going on underground.
Okay.
And the bars, to some extent, or it seemed like there was a kind of segregation of the city. There's, at least in those days especially, the north side of San Antonio was white, and the south side of San Antonio was Hispanic. And downtown was the mingling point, I grew up in Terrell Hills, and then went to school at Central Catholic, which is downtown. And it was a major experience for me of going from the upper class, all white German San Antonio, going downtown and all of a sudden discovering the Hispanics, and I would say this Central Catholic in those days was probably evenly divided, white and Hispanic. We had a few black, not very many black kids. That's partly because there wasn't a large black presence in San Antonio. The sort of idea was in San Antonio, or in Texas, in those days, that black people lived in Houston rather than San Antonio, because there was a thriving black ghetto there, I guess. So I think that there's a way in which there are a set of qualities that the gay community sort of believes is the right way for us to live as gay. I mean, a lot of it is sort of a joke, and some of it is not putting ketchup on steak, or particular habits of being neat and clean, But there's also a quality that we have to trust each other. Gay people have to support one another. We can't be scammers and crooks. We have to treat each other honestly and respectfully. Now, there are lots of gay people who don't follow these stereotypes of what it means to be gay. But built into gay consciousness, I think, is a kind of morality. And it's very much the sort of Buddhist approach to morality. Don't do things that will hurt other people. Be good for goodness sake, not because God is watching or because somebody's going to judge you after you're dead. Now, I'm not saying that we are necessarily all Buddhists, but I think that there is a modern consciousness that a lot comes from feminism. In fact, maybe as much as what I want to call a gay sensibility is also a feminist sensibility. Women would treat each other this way. Well, women cannot be crooks. Women cannot oppress each other. Now, the reality is yes, they do, and yes, we do. But we have a value system, and it's a good value system, and jokingly saves the world.
And it comes from the heart, as opposed from book.
Yeah.
That was the camera.
One of the things I noticed was that there were a class of people that I would never have had introduction to if we weren't drinking at the same gay bars. So there was a way in which the rich and the poor came together in the bars. Although in Almonds Park there were a lot of private parties, and there were some A-gays who threw really fabulous parties. But I also saw them in the bars, and I think that, and I was raised on the South Side, so it was a benefit for me to meet men like Hap Veltman and a lot of other affluent men who had a good positive influence on me. And I would not have been in the right social circle to meet these people had we not all been gathered around the same cloth.
All right. So this is kind of a life-changing event through human contact. This is good. Did you experience anything like that as well, Kobe?
Well, you know, I come in a little later now, and not so much speaking of my own experience, but of how I understood the dynamics in San Antonio in the 80s. What we said was that San Antonio was slow and behind. You know, there's always a joke San Antonio is 10 years or 20 years behind the rest of the country, which is good and bad. But that the major issues in San Antonio were the presence of the military, which put a chilling effect on being openly gay. The large Hispanic population, which has a sort of different cultural attitude towards what homosexuality is, and top or bottom, and you know who's gay and who isn't. And then the Catholic Church, which has created the secrecy and guilt around sex. Okay. So these three forces were seen to sort of dampen or keep invisible gay life in San Antonio. So there was like this secret life going on underground.
Okay.
And the bars, to some extent, or it seemed like there was a kind of segregation of the city. You know, there's, at least in those days especially, the north side of San Antonio was white, and the south side of San Antonio was Hispanic. And downtown was the mingling point, you know. I grew up in Terrell Hills, and then went to school at Central Catholic, which is downtown. And it was a major experience for me of going from the upper class, all white German San Antonio, going downtown and all of a sudden discovering the Hispanics and the I would say this Central Catholic in those days was probably evenly divided, white and Hispanic. We had a few black, not very many black kids. That's partly because there wasn't a large black presence in San Antonio. The sort of idea was in San Antonio, or in Texas, in those days, that black people lived in Houston rather than San Antonio, because there was a thriving black ghetto there, I guess.
Okay.
The bar around the corner was the Crew.
The Crew, yes.
The Crew?
Yes, it was a hustler bar.
There it is.
And it was young hustlers, and I went to the Crew because my father had shown me where the Crew was, and I went there, and you may have, through Gene, heard about Tom Nash. He went by the name Mother, and Mother Nash was about 300 pounds and wore moo-moos. And I was in the Crew, a young man, unescorted, and men were buying drinks, and the bartender just kept placing drinks and saying, "It's from this man at the end of the bar," and I would smile and nod, and I had way too many drinks in front of me. I could not drink them, but I didn't understand what was going on. And I would just simply nod and raise my glass and thank them. And one man came over and said, "Boy, if you're going to sit in this bar and drink, you better know what the score is." And Mother Nash came over and said, "Leave him alone," and chased the man away, and then turned to me and said, "Boy, if you're going to drink in this bar, you need to know what's going on." Well, I didn't realize that, of course, they thought that I was a young professional, and that I was taking these drinks and just not, with no intention of giving anything back. I was pretty naive.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Thank you. I will definitely explore the crew, stories of the crew from some others that were young and grew up in San Antonio and they're coming out.
The New Age thought, particularly about the nature of religion and mythology. I'd grown up religious, and I was interested in this, and as I learned about other religions, I came to sort of understand, well, you have to look at religion from over and above, and when you do, you begin to see that there is meaning behind these stories, but the stories aren't necessarily factual, and the factual part of it isn't what's important. It's the meaning and the message. I think that's a natural way for gay people to understand religion. We get pushed out of the churches. There isn't an explanation for us, so we have to make up our own explanation, which means we have to figure out what religion is really about. And so I think a lot of us, like comparative religion scholars, end up in this higher perspective, a higher vision on what religion is. And I think everybody should be going there. So many of the problems in the world happen because people are taking religion seriously and literally, instead of understanding that it's myth and story and art and symbol and poetry. It's all poetry. And the issue of whether Jesus really rose from the dead, that's missing the point. Whether God created in 7 days, missing the point completely.
Yes.
And I think the human race is moving in that direction. I think that one of the roles that gay people have had down through time is as agents of change. We were the priests who taught the religion. We were the nuns that taught in the schools. We were the wise old women who knew the secrets of the herbs and were the healers and teachers and the witches in the good sense.
Okay.
So this is, I think, is our mission today, is to help human race to wake up. And some of it is from sexual patterns, and some of it is from religion. And those turn out to be all interconnected with each other.
Okay. I need to let you know that I am a Buddhist, practicing Buddhist for over 40 years. And since I was 18, I was looking for an explanation of things that I understood about myself and even pre-birth memories. Yeah, I went there.
Sure.
And I found it in Buddhism. And what you would refer to as all is one, we refer to as the Dharma body. It's basically all there is. But that means that there is, we influence the slightest thing, and the slightest thing influences us. Now, they're starting to prove that scientifically, but in a way, the purpose of the religion was to get us to that point until we could look at it in a scientific method. In the meantime, we're living the truth, not really knowing or understanding until we reveal it to ourselves. I have no conflict whatsoever with what it is you say.
Basic Buddhism.
Okay.
The symbols, they're myths and symbols. We don't need to talk about God because we need to talk about human suffering.
Exactly.
And do something about what's wrong with the world instead of all that fighting and theorizing over invisible things that nobody knows and nobody agrees on.
Exactly.
It's interesting that the Buddha was saying that 2,500 years ago, and we're only now in the West beginning to talk about it in the past 100 years.
That is so hilarious to me. With my particular Buddhism, it is stated that Shakyamuni Buddha said his great vow, was to raise all humanity to his own level. In effect, I'm not greater than you, and therefore I'm going to punish you or reward you. It's you. And you will learn this as you find that that you are all, once you become all that you can be. And looking chronologically, historically, that we have shirked off the warlords that owned us, owned our children, owned anything that we produced. We're shirking off heads of government that controlled us and made us go to war. We are moving past religion as an abstinence. There's just no time, we're too busy working, we don't go, so it's not that we're feeding this philosophy to children, it's simply just not in our life. So that means the kids have to get out and find out what life is on their own. And now the challenge is to learn about ourselves as we get along with others. And that seems to be pretty hard because we're making the same mistake that we did when everybody told us to go to war.
You make me feel like dancing. Wanna dance.